You do the hard things during the hard times. You don't do the hard things during the good times. You do the good things and the easy things during the good times. How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to the Astrology Report, this time for March 6th through the 12th of 2023. We are finally in, I've been using the analogy of the snowball effect. It's turning into an avalanche. This week has a lot going on, and next week has even more, so let's just jump straight into it. We're starting Monday off with the moon ingressing into Virgo. After it ingresses into Virgo, it will go opposite Mercury. Mercury's in Pisces now. It's in detriment. So this is a weird conversation where, again, Mercury, the planet of communication, is in detriment. The communication's very off. But the moon, and as you can see, we're getting into the full moon. The full moon actually technically happens really late Monday night going into Tuesday morning. But the full moon in Virgo is like looking at information, right? The full moon is realizing the things that we don't see. It's kind of uncovering certain truths. And it's in the sign of Virgo. Specificity, information, data, organization, details, plans, things like that. But as we get into that full moon, the moon will ingress into Virgo, and it goes opposite Mercury, where while Mercury is in Pisces, the information doesn't make sense, but the moon's in Virgo, where it's like, hey, I have the information, I have the data, here you go. But there's something about it that doesn't make sense. There's something about it that is confusing. There's something about it that isn't necessarily clear. The sun will also sextile Uranus on Monday, so this is technically a full moon sextile / trine Uranus, depending on how you look at it. The only thing I like about this is it's the sun in Pisces, right? We're kind of aloof. We're in that changeable season, and as it sextiles Uranus, there's this kind of like spark to be innovative, to change, to be disruptive. And it's not necessarily like, you know, a square is like, you know, a disruption that kind of breaks everything, versus the sextile is kind of like, oh, now that I'm in this groove, maybe I will try to do something a little bit different, and it ends up working out really well. But this is the full moon in Virgo, making a sextile to Uranus / trine Uranus, again, however you want to look at it. And here's the thing. What's critical about this full moon is that, again, it technically happens really late on Monday night. And once we get into Tuesday, early Tuesday morning, Saturn enters Pisces. And we'll talk about that tomorrow, or well, here in a minute. But the thing is, full moon, right? Uncovering the night, looking at what we don't always get to see. And it's in Virgo. This is all of the information. This is all of the specifics. This is all of the details. What's nice about this is that this is during Pisces season. So it's kind of like an organized mess. You know how I know a lot of you are like this. Let's say you're not very clean about your space, but you know where everything is. There's a bunch of piles. It's kind of like hoarders. I use a lot of hoarders analogies. It's so perfect, but it's kind of like hoarders in the sense where it's all junk and crap around them, but they know where it is. And that really reminds me of the Pisces Virgo axis. I've also talked about the Pisces Virgo axis being similar to when you're a musician and you know all your chords, you know all your notes and all that kind of good stuff, but then and that's the Virgo part, but the Pisces part is kind of just slapping it all together. And this is kind of like one of those moments where when we're in Pisces season, we're kind of in a jam mode. We're in a very creative, explorative mode. And that full moon in Virgo is kind of like, well, what about that specific riff you wrote? Or what about that specific, time signature that you know how to play? Would that fit into this? And so what's nice about this is that this is kind of like putting the pieces together. It's kind of like, if you're a musician, or I don't really know if I can relate this to art as much, but in music, if you're like jamming out with a band and you're kind of doing some ideas and something starts to sound really good, and then you kind of just add in one extra little piece that you know is going to sound good no matter what, but then you add it in and it just completes the song. That's what this full moon is very similar to. The problem is, as we go into Monday, the moon's going to go opposite Mercury, where it's like the information's not going to make sense. To kind of continue on that music analogy, it's kind of like having a riff, but that riff is not in the same, what's the word I'm looking for? The note isn't in the same, what's the word where like you have certain notes that go together, but another note doesn't mix with the note. I don't know why I can't think of that, but that's kind of like what this is. Like there's something not harmonizing. There's something not clicking there. Even though it sounds really good by itself, when you mix it in, it doesn't work all that well. But in a more literal sense, this is gaining some kind of information. This is gaining some kind of knowledge that wasn't exactly what you expected, or it's just not that clear. And again, the hard part about this is a lot of this stuff in this next month is very world-based. when we talk about the economy, when we talk about geopolitics, the war, and all that stuff, is really where you're going to see this. March is really almost dedicated to like the world astrology stuff. On a more personal level, though, with this full moon, it's kind of like, hey, I'm realizing this. I'm realizing where I want things to go, but it's the details. The devil's in the details, and the details aren't all that clear. What's next isn't all of that clear. How it's going to go about isn't all that clear. And, there's a part of me that says, okay, like that's not going to be fun. But the other part of me just goes, does it have to be clear? Do you have to have a plan in order to know where you're going? Like, I feel like for some people, they get so hung up on like, I have to have the plan. I have to have all the details together and organize. And then they do all this organization, but all of that energy that they put into it drains them from actually doing the thing. And this is almost kind of like, why don't you commit to just doing the thing, and the details will work themselves out later. That's kind of how I see this too. And so on one end, it will be frustrating because you're not going to, if you're looking for specific answers, I think they're just going to be not as clear as you might want them to be, but they don't need to be clear at this moment. You just need to know that this is the information, and, maybe it's a little bit all over the place, but it is what it is. Take it for what it is at face value and go with it. But that leads us into Tuesday. On Tuesday, the moon, as it's still in Virgo, and again, the full moon technically happens like super late Monday night going into Tuesday morning. So the moon's still pretty full at this point, but it's going to make a square to Mars, and it's going to go opposite Neptune. But the real kicker is Saturn is moving into Pisces. So the thing I want to talk about with this is, as the moon's making the square to Mars, the problem with all of these transits this month is that all of the Pisces transits and this full moon squares Mars. And Mars is action, drive, intention, fights and conflicts too, right? But the problem is Mars and Gemini is just taking action based off the information that we have. Mars and Gemini is also like arguing based off, information, or, being very verbally argumentative or things like that. And the problem with the moon squaring Mars is this information that is revealed kind of tears up your plans. It kind of goes, it kind of, again, really just throws a wrench in your plans. It makes you go, okay, well, shit, what do I do now? This wasn't the information I was expecting. How do I move forward from here? And then throughout the day, the moon's going to go opposite Neptune, where this is kind of like, if you're expecting a message, if you're expecting information and then you get it and it's not what you expected, it's like, when you just go through it even more detail and like, well, what does this mean? And what does that mean? And I'm not really sure what this says. So there's going to be a lot of confusion over the specifics. And the moon opposite Neptune is trying to look through, like trying to be like, all right, if I put a big spotlight on it, if I just like comb through this information, can I make it any more clear? And that is going to be difficult. That is not going to be easy. But then Saturn moves into Pisces. I mean, here we are. If you haven't already, I did a whole delineation episode about the history of Saturn and Pisces. So if you want to know what the historical, precedent is for Saturn and Pisces, go ahead and check out that video. There's a lot of great comments on that video too. But I also just put out my Saturn and Pisces video of how it's going to be affecting your zodiac sign. So make sure you watch that. Now, here's the real one. If you want to get even more information on how March is going to affect you, I did a really deep dive into my March rising sign horoscopes over on my Patreon. So if you want to support the channel, help put out better videos, and if you want to get rising sign horoscopes, as well as I do live streams, I do Ask Me Anything episodes, there's a Discord group chat, I do monthly overviews and things like that, head over to the Patreon. I went really deep into the March horoscopes. But Saturn is entering Pisces. Number one, there's really a lot to talk about this. This is why I've already made 2 videos on it. But number one, the fixed signs: Leo, Aquarius, Scorpio, Taurus. Boy, is it a breath of relief for you guys. I mean, there is nothing in fixed signs right now except for the South Node. Sorry, there's a little bit of a weird distortion going on right here. Don't mind it. So for one, this is a breath of relief for all the fixed signs. I think there is going to be something that just feels easier, but just because it's Saturn not in a fixed sign anymore, that doesn't mean there's not going to be challenges. I get frustrated when people always ask, oh, Cameron, when's the astrology going to be good? The astrology is not about going, oh, this is when it's good or this is where it's bad. There's good times and bad times in every moment that you are alive. Astrology helps us decipher where those bad things are taking place and where the good things that are taking place. So it's, let's say the bad things are happening in your fourth house of home and family. Maybe don't look to that area to have a lot of fun. But if all the fun things are happening in your 11th house of friends, why don't you go spend more time with friends than hang out at home? That's kind of what I wanted to speak about with here, because as Saturn moves into Pisces, Saturn still rules limitations and restrictions and structures and discipline and maturity. And it's just moving into a new sign. It's just moving into a new part of your chart. You have learned, or at least dealt with the consequences and dealt with all of the hardships of wherever Aquarius is at in your chart. But now things are changing. And like I said before, I've been saying this over the past 2 months, you have to kind of enjoy what you're at, where you're at right now, because not everything lasts forever and things will change. And so as Saturn goes into Pisces, number one, Pisces gets real serious. Pisces is the very aloof, fun type person. Imagine the kind of person that's at a party that's always drunk and always just like a good time. And Saturn's kind of like, they start growing up, or they start maturing, or like they get in trouble somehow. So the sign that rules, spirituality, faith, oneness, in my opinion, I made a lot of Jesus references with Pisces. That area is going to get serious. And so again, you want to look at where Pisces rules in your chart, and that's going to give you an idea of where you're going to be more mature, where you're going to take more discipline, where you're going to deal with more restrictions and limitations. But as Saturn moves into here, I think just on this day, this whole area shifts for you. And that's hard to just encapsulate of like, oh, this is exactly what it's going to mean. We're going into a new 3-year period of time where this is the area of your life where you're going to be dealing with, restrictions, maturity, so on and so forth. But I think on Tuesday, number one, you will feel a vibe shift, right? That is for certain. But I think the second thing is an area of your life where you might be idealistic or where you might be rosy glasses. It's time to take serious. It is time to be, for example, like let's say you do identify as religious. How religious are you? Do you actually take your faith seriously? Like something like, for example, I was raised really evangelical Christian, and I have respect for all religions, to be honest with you, but like I legitimately respect Muslims a lot simply because they're about their religion. They really don't mess around. Like Christians, it's like they're like, I'm a Christian, but they do pretty much everything that the Bible says not to do. And the reason I'm using this analogy is it's kind of like, okay, like let's say you do identify as a Christian. Do you actually apply those principles? Do you actually believe in having faith? And I think that's the other thing that I think is true for everybody. Like as we go through these next few years where there's going to be a lot of hardships, I think if any astrologer is telling you it's going to be amazing and good, they don't know what they're doing. Look around. The situation is not going to get better anytime soon. And I don't say that to fearmonger. I say that to have a check-in with reality. And the thing is here, I don't say that to fearmonger because what I'm here to tell you is that this is a time to have faith, but it's Saturn. Or like, for example, a lot of out of World War II, a lot of people that were atheists turned Christian, and a lot of Christians or they turned religious. I can't remember what denomination it was, and a lot of people that were religious turned atheist. And I think think about that a lot because in those times, and I think it was actually the Jews that did that because I know. But I got to refresh my history on that one. But when you go through these hardships, you really actually have to apply your faith. You actually have to be disciplined in your faith. And it's not about, faith isn't about like, oh, everything's great and everything's perfect. It's that during trials and tribulations, that is the time to really dedicate yourself to faith. And it doesn't matter what religion you are. I mean, again, we're all spiritual people here. A lot of us have faith in like rocks and shit. But like, do you practice that? Do you need crystals, or do you need meditation, or do you need astrology to have faith? And I think as Saturn's in Pisces, this is the time to really trust that faith and to actually be disciplined about it and to actually put your money where your mouth is. And it's not going to be easy. None of this stuff is easy. That's the other thing. A lot of people are like, Cameron, when's it going to get easy? Life is not easy. It's easy if you make it to be. Some people can have one situation and go, this is the hardest situation in the world. I can't get over this. And other people can go, that shit's easy. I'll take it on. A lot of it's just about confidence. But I ask you with Saturn and Pisces to just go like, what does it mean to believe? What does it mean to have faith? Saturn is also now in the sign with Neptune. And as that gets closer and closer, our vision of what reality is will get distorted. Structures and governments and authorities are going to get distorted. It's going to become confusing. So as Saturn enters here, you can't have your faith on, materialism. And don't get me wrong, I love money. I I love capitalism, but also, oh my God, you say that and people just think you're the worst person ever. Of course, this is whatever this system is not true to free market capitalism, blah, 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 blah. We're not here to talk about that. But the idea is, I don't put my belief in, once I have money, life would be great. And boy, money, woo, and a big house and then I'll die happy. It's like life is so much more than, it doesn't matter if you can make billions of dollars and you could be miserable, or you could be in poverty and be completely happy. And I just think as Saturn's in Pisces, it's like you can't put your faith, you can't put your trust in these institutions and in these systems. You have to make meaning for it in yourself. And so I think as Saturn goes into Pisces with this full moon, it's like, all right, it's time to apply that faith. It's time to be disciplined about it. And you don't apply faith. Again, I've said this before, you do the hard things during the hard times. You don't do the hard things during the good times. You do the good things and the easy things during the good times. If you go to prison, you think that's the time to go, oh, well, let me just relax and chill. If we're going into a hard time, this is the time to be very serious and dedicated about, okay, what do I believe? How am I going to restore faith? If you lose your job, that's not the time to say, oh my gosh, God has it out for me. And, I'm just, nothing ever goes my way. That's the time to still remain faithful. And you guys cannot play it safe. You have to take a leap. You have to actually trust and believe. You have to put your money where your mouth is. And if you want to have success with this, you have to align yourself to the frequency you want. If you're in fear, if you go, oh my God, how am I going to pay my bills? Oh my God, how am I going to do that? You're going to attract fear. The universe will always throw opportunities at you, and it is up for you to discern which opportunities are the ones that you want to take on. If you have a very high goal of where you want to be in life, but you're taking really lousy opportunities, the universe goes, okay, this is what you think you're worthy of. And so we're only going to give you that. But if you have faith and you keep in that faith and you go, no, I know what opportunities I want. I know what I'm looking for. I'm not going to settle for anything less than what I know. And again, you lose your job, you have X problem, you have Y problem. That's the time to remain faithful. And that's the time to remain grateful too. That's the Saturn and Pisces stuff. Jupiter's all about gratitude, and Saturn there's going to be restrictions with that. And that's not the time to go, oh, well, now I'm not grateful. It's the time to be even more grateful. And so I'll be talking a lot about this as the years go on. So this won't be my last rant about it. But then we go into Wednesday and the moon will go into Libra. Sorry, it's a little warm in here. That's really it. The moon's going into Libra. And I think this is kind of like, it's kind of like after you have a big conversation where there's a lot of new information, you just kind of sit down and take it in. Wednesday has not a lot going on. It's just the day, I think, to just process, to kind of balance things out. Okay, if this is where things are at now, what does this mean for over here? Because for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. This is the time to kind of balance out the scales in a sense. So Wednesday's really not that big of a deal. Take a breather. Thursday's looking excellent. I do like Thursday. The moon will go opposite Jupiter and Venus, and then it will trine Mars. So once we get past Wednesday and we do this balancing act and we get things kind of figured out, then the moon's going to go opposite Jupiter and Aries, where, again, Jupiter and Aries is about having faith in the action. I don't remember if it's this week or next week. There's a transit that I really wanted to talk about Jupiter and Aries with. I don't remember. You'll hear me talk about it. But as the moon goes opposite Jupiter, where's my actions best placed now? Jupiter and Aries, again, Kool-Aid man, just bust through the door, go through it. The moon and Libra going opposite that is let's have a little bit of class. Let's not just break down the walls. Let's have a grand entrance instead. And as the moon goes opposite Jupiter, I think this is, again, a balancing act of where can I apply my beliefs? Where can I take action now? But where is it going to best suit me? Because it's not just about busting through the walls anymore. Simply because now that Saturn's in Pisces, we need a moment to clarify where things are at. Because when your plans completely change, you can't just rely, or when the situation completely changed, you can't just rely on the plans that you had that were given to you before everything changed. So the moon will go opposite Jupiter and Venus. And in my opinion, I said this, I think last week, you got to still have fun. It doesn't really matter how hard it is. And it's not about, oh, you should have fun because life isn't all that bad. You have every right to bitch and whine and complain about how bad your life is or how bad your situation is, but it doesn't help anyone, especially you. You just moaning and being in a little, what's that word? Having a little pity party. It doesn't even help you. You might think it does because you just want to release it. And there are, times where just sometimes you need to vent, but you have to understand, like, you just being in a pity party essentially literally is taking away from you. That is not putting you on the track that you want to be. And I think as the moon goes opposite Jupiter and Venus is, in my opinion, we have to have some fun. Venus is still in Aries. How can you take this on with stride and make it fun? How can you enjoy what you're doing? Like, Venus and Jupiter are still together here. The conjunction's over now, but they're still in the same sign, and the moon's going to be making a contact with them. Now, that's not to say that you need to just be like, boy, oh boy, I'm so excited for every little thing. But you can still say, you know what? For example, let's say you lose your job. You can go, oh God, woe is me. I'm never going to get a job again. Or you can go, fuck it, I hated that job anyway. Let me go see if I can find a new job as something that is interesting that I actually want to do or that I've never done before. And put a little bit of pep in your step. Like, because if you're depressed and you try to go apply for a job, they're going to be like, this guy's a loser. We don't want to hire him. Versus if you got a good attitude, they might be oh, okay, like, this guy, like, seems like he's got a good vibe. Maybe we'll be interested in him. And so I look at Thursday as like, Wednesday, just take a breather, balance things out with all this new information. And this is the day to say, you know what? This might not be the situation I want to be in. This may not be exactly where I want to be, but how can I make the best of the situation? That's the whole point of like, if you really want to have a good life, make the best of every situation. If you want to have a shitty life, be like, every situation's bad and I'm a victim of every single circumstance that's completely out of my control and I have no autonomy because I'm just a victim. That is a great way to live absolutely miserably. And again, I've talked a lot about this before. We've all been victimized. You are more than welcome to use the title of being victimized. But the victim story you tell yourself, which this is the difference. You have to separate the event from the narrative. And what narrative you tell yourself. Okay, I was victimized. So that means, oh, I can never be this, or I struggle with X, Y, and Z. You can still be a victim, and then you can rewrite that narrative and say, well, just because I was a victim doesn't mean I can't do this, doesn't mean I can't do that. How about because I was a victim, that means I can do this. That means I can accomplish this because I survived that, because I did better than that. And so, with this Pisces stuff, it's really about rewriting beliefs. Saturn there, also, Saturn is restrictions and limitations, and it's in the sign of beliefs. How many beliefs do you guys have that legitimately get in your way? And it serves no one, not even you. So why do you have them? And then, of course, you look back, you're like, oh, it's because it was installed from childhood, or I had this experience and you made things up. Or I shouldn't say you made things up, but like you had an experience, and so you made a story about it, because that's how our brains work. We operate in stories. This is the time to go, what stories have I told about myself that really don't do anything for me? Like being like, I'm fat and ugly, so that's why I can't, have a healthy relationship or be successful, doesn't help you. There are plenty of fat and ugly people out there that get great relationships, great jobs, great money. And I'm just using that as an analogy. But I'm just saying with Thursday, find a way to reconfigure yourself to go, how can I take this on with stride? How can I make the best of this situation? Okay. We get to Friday. This is where things get a little bit more complicated. The moon is going to make a trine to Mars. That's the other thing. I think as after it goes opposite Jupiter and Venus and it makes that trine to Mars, this is kind of like going, okay, I know where I can take action now. I know where I can kind of maneuver myself. It's not going to be perfect, but I think there is a little bit more of a motivation to push forward. Then it's going to square Pluto. So again, you kind of have to get over some of those fears and the power stuff. And Pluto's at 29 degrees Capricorn. We're about to have Pluto in Aquarius. But then the moon goes into Scorpio and it trines Saturn and conjoins K2. This is rough. This is not easy. No one said it was going to be easy. But the other thing too is, and this is why I get frustrated when people are like, Cameron, when is it going to be easy? When life is easy, it means nothing. If you crawl your shit out of whatever shitty situation you go into and you get yourself out of it, do you know how fucking rewarding that is? Like, no one can take away the confidence that is built up in you from getting yourself out of a shitty situation or doing something that was completely difficult. You do things easy, it doesn't mean anything to you. If you just made $1 million and it was just out of a blink of an eye, it's not going to mean anything to you. at all. And so you'll piss it all away and then you'll be right back where you are. Versus if you crawl yourself out of the mud and you do the hard work, and it's not easy and it's not fun, you can make $1 million. It's going to install such a confidence in you. It's going to install so many beliefs that nothing can take that away from you, to where if you do lose that $1 million, it doesn't matter, because you know that you did it once, and so that you can do it again. And I'm bringing this up because as the moon goes into Scorpio and it conjoins the South Node, we got to release some stuff. The moon's going to be trining Saturn. This is constructive. We're finally going to have a moon in Scorpio transit not squaring Saturn in Aquarius. You know how nice that is? And this is Saturn in Pisces. This is knowing, hey, I have to be more disciplined about my beliefs here. I've got to be more realistic about what's going on here. And the moon's going to go into Scorpio, where you know you've got to release something. You know you've got to get rid of something. You know there's something not serving you. And it's moon in Scorpio. It's this pain. It's this resentment. And it's this woe is me. Why did this happen to me? But you understand that that's the past. You understand that that's not helping you to get to where you need to go. You understand that it's the fucking chains that bind you. Think of the devil card. The man and the woman that are in chains, they're big enough to take them off of themselves. And so it's not going to be fun when you have to purge out shit that happened as a kid, or certain beliefs that you had because of whatever fucking reason. You realize, well, it's not my fault, but also it is my problem. That's the thing. It's not your fault, but it is your problem. And so this is the time to purge that away, because it's trining Saturn. This Scorpio resentment stuff is not going to help you. But what I do like about the Pisces Scorpio stuff is that there's an empathy here. There's an understanding. Like, this is like, not to get on my Jesus shit right now, but and again, I'm just using, ask a Christian what Jesus says. Jesus is like, I'll accept you for anything. You're a sinner. We have accepted that. But as you just welcome me in your heart, you can go to the kingdom of God, essentially. Now, we could disagree about the specifics of religions all day long, but all I'm trying to sit here and say is the idea of Christianity on paper, that is accepting people no matter what their circumstances are or what they've done in the past, to where they can be renewed in the kingdom of God. And that's kind of like this moon and Scorpio stuff. It's like, hey, you've done bad, or there's not something good here. But it's Saturn and Pisces. There is empathy, there is understanding, and it's a healing, right? It doesn't matter what your past is, come as you are. Let's get into some of the Nirvana stuff with Saturn and Pisces. And this is just the time to go, I'm ready to change. This is Saturn, limitations, restrictions. It's in the sign of change. It's time to do it. And I think this moon in Scorpio transit is an excellent time to just let that shit go. Let it go. It's okay. Think about how good. And the thing is too, you can't be worried about because if you're just worried about how am I going to pay my bills, how am I going to do this, you're just going to spiral. But if you think, what does it feel like to feel refreshed? What does it feel like to let go of all of my negative beliefs? And you start imagining that feeling, and your body starts going into the frequency of what that feels like. Literally encompass the feeling of what it feels like to let go of all your bullshit, go into an area if you want to be. And when you attach yourself to that feeling, that's where the magic happens. So Friday, I want you guys to purge. Friday, I want you guys to get real with it, because that's what's going on. We get to Saturday, we got even more shit going on. This isn't a month that you can just sit down and have it pass by. If you just sit on your couch and hope that it passes by, someone's going to come knocking on your door, and there ain't no avoiding it. Venus is going to make a sextile to Mars. We could still have some fun. Mercury's going to sextile Uranus. There are alternative ways of thinking. The moon will go opposite Uranus and trine Mercury. Kind of a little bit of a clusterfuck here. But let's just put it this way. Venus is going to sextile Mars. Have fun. It's Venus in Aries, Mars in Gemini. Okay, new information. You know what? Fuck it. I'm just going to try this. I'm just going to shoot my shot. Throw $20 in the machine, in the slot machine. Couldn't think of what that word was. Not saying to gamble, but it's more so you don't need to make it all that serious. You don't need to go, oh my God, everything's on the line. Just shoot your shot and see what happens. You get denied, fucking who cares? Mercury's going to also sextile Uranus. This is an excellent day to just kind of it's not like a force yourself to think differently, but you know how someone, married couples get this. Your partner might tell you something that you need to do or change that would be good for you, and they tell it to you all the time and you don't listen. But the second some stranger tells it to you, you're like, whoa, I just heard this for the first time today. And your partner's like, I've been telling you that for years. This is kind of like that. Like maybe you just need to hear it from a different source. And this is like a day where your mind kind of gets opened up a little bit and you're like, maybe I can think about it this way. Maybe I can be more open-minded about it. Because what's nice about Mercury and Pisces is it's not a time to be like, oh, well, this doesn't make rational sense. And well, this is, it needs to be specific and orderly and black and white. This is just a time to be like, okay, well, I don't really know what makes sense. I don't really know what the specifics are. Let me try this. Let me try this on. And it's not about buying clothes that you know that you're going to wear forever. It's about trying clothes on and seeing what works, seeing what fits, seeing what you like. Okay. So then we get into Sunday. The only thing that's going on, wait, did I talk about? Oh, I did not talk about the moon going opposite Uranus and trining Mercury. So the only thing too is that the moon going opposite Uranus this is a breakthrough moment. It's going to be disruptive. Your first day doing anything is not going to be fun. Your first day trying to make, huge changes in your life is not going to be fun. There's going to be some wrenches thrown in your plans. But I think as the moon's in Scorpio trining your Mercury right after that right after that opposition is like knowing that you have a different mindset that you could put to look at all of this stuff, knowing that it doesn't have to be fixed and rigid. It's still going to be an emotional trigger, but Mercury and Pisces like, well, just sit with it. Like rather than being like, oh my God, you're triggered. Whoa, let's calm down. Like, what can we do? It's going, okay, like I'm triggered. This sucks. But like having someone there, like this is what I do appreciate about Pisces is like, they can give you such a completely different way of looking at things. And I think this is the time to just like allow yourself, if there's any kind of something coming into you, like allow yourself to change your mindset here. That is a possibility for you. And then we get into Sunday and the moon's just going to make a trine to Neptune. So I don't really look at this as bad. I don't really look at it as like amazing either. Because the problem is with the moon in Scorpio is, again, first off, it's now past the South Node. We've kind of done the draining part of things. But it's still in Scorpio. There's still this kind of ucky feeling to the day, not emotionally charged, a little depressy-wessy. And the moon's going to be trining Neptune, where on one perspective, it might be easier to construe your fears. You know how we can just talk ourselves into an oblivion and scare ourselves shitless with just, oh my God, well, it's like when you're afraid of the dark, it's like, oh my God, well, it's dark. Well, who's behind there? Well, what if it's a murderer? Well, what if that person wants to kill me? And then you just spiral. Like, so just try not to like spiral out of control and just make up delusions. But what is nice about the moon in Scorpio trining Neptune is like, when you do something new for the first time, like, let's say, and this is just an example. I'm not saying this is what you have to do exactly for this, but like, let's say you've never been sober before. Let's say you're constantly drinking, constantly on drugs, whatever. And then you get to that and you go sober. It's like your third day. And this could also be kind of like, oh, making up your reasons why you should, start drinking again, or making up your reasons why you should, just do one thing. Or this is kind of like seeing like, you know what? I feel good and I can see this differently. I don't feel good right now, but I'm actually starting to see how my world can be different. People that get sober, they talk about like cloud 9 or the pink cloud or something like that, where it's like the first few months of sobriety are like everything just becomes clear and everything is just amazing. And that's kind of like how I see this too. So Sunday's a little bit of an interesting day, but let's talk about next week because we got a lot. Look at all of this. Mars squares Neptune. Ouch. Mercury Cazimi can join Neptune. Mars leaves shadow. Thank God. But then Mercury makes a square to Mars with that Cazimi. So it's going to be kind of like, well, where do we go from here? We have Venus entering Taurus and we have Mercury entering Aries. We are in the middle of the avalanche, guys. It's from here on out. It's this week, next week, and the week after that, where it's just one thing after another. So you better hold on tight and have some fun with it. An avalanche is scary. You can die, but you're also sliding down a mountain super fast. It's a little fun. It's a little fun. I've never been in an avalanche, so I don't know. So I'm sure some people are going to be like, Cameron, avalanches are actually really deadly and scary. How could you say they're fun at all? Anyway, final thoughts. I think I was really clear with it this week, guys. We're going to get even more into this when we go into next week, and we're going to get even more into it when we go into the week after that. So be prepared. Make sure you like this video. Like it, please. Click it right now. Comment. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know what you're expecting for Saturn and Pisces. Let me know what you're not looking forward to. Let me know what you know that you need to change. Let me know what happens too, since it happens on Tuesday. I know a lot of you come back and watch this video. Let me know what happens to you if anything does. Support me over on Patreon. Make sure you subscribe to the channel too. I have a lot of people that watch that don't subscribe. Subscribe. It helps. And book a consultation with me. If you want me to go into your birth chart, let you know the specifics. Typically in my consultations, I go over the whole next year, all the specific dates that are important for you, what mindset you need to have, what you need to be more aware of, and all of that good stuff. So book a consultation with me if you haven't already. And with that being said, I'll be seeing you guys next week.